Transition Radio TV, brought to you by thebestformstore.com. They have everything you could possibly need for your cross-dressing and transgender needs. Visit their website at www.thebestformstore.com and tell them Transition Radio sent you.
Ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grooves to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. A 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think he may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transition Radio with your host, Mark Angelo Cummings. It's the love that saves me. Well, hello, and good evening, and welcome to Transition Radio TV, live from the land of enchantment, Silver City, New Mexico. Well, you guys are probably used to seeing me and the beautiful blonde, Jessica, but that has come to an end. And, it's all good things must come to an end. Sometimes love just isn't enough, and I really don't want to get on into it in the show, but I'm sure a lot of you that have been following us know what took place. Anyway, on a better note, tonight I have an amazing guest. Her name is Tia Pesando, and Tia considers herself 75%, like all other hermaphrodites, was assigned the male gender marker at birth and raised to be a man. She quotes, "I adapted to this at a very young age of 6 for the next decade." She continued to sacrifice aspects of herself to fit in with other boys. At 16, she made the ultimate sacrifice in a near-death experience, a dream so real that her body was convinced that she had burned to death, thus shut down its function. After being revived, she found herself compelled to take a religious path in life, though it would eventually become clear that she could not succeed in the mission while in the guise of a man.
The matter of France. Christianity appears to be under siege. This is the result of 100 years of apostasy and abandonment of Christian ideals. The gates must be shut against the siege, it seems, no matter who is trapped outside. In the Diocese of Reims, it is now suggested that the LGBT community contributes to the destabilization of the natural environment. His Eminence Cardinal André Vintois, Archbishop of Paris, called on Christians to manifest and challenge. His Eminence Cardinal Philippe Barberin, Archbishop of Lyon, spoke of social collapse and suggested that one day they will legalize incest. It is an honor to submit to the authorities of our Holy Mother Church, and I certainly do against a possible acceptance of incest, because it really is against nature and is a heinous crime, and therefore is described using the Hebrew word zima in the Holy Bible, as I have also said. We lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and adore transgender people should not see these archbishops or that which they represent as our bitter enemy, no matter how much anger, frustration, or despair we may feel at this obvious suggestion that the way of love we can feel is somehow not good enough for the God that we love. Christianity is a faith based on love, and as long as there is still love, there is still meaning. The Church believes that homosexual and transgender people should be treated with understanding and love, but our people are limited in their own understanding of our love. I ask you to forgive them, for they know not what they do.
And now welcome to the show, the lovely Tia Michelle Pesando. Thank you
Thank
for
you. It's
joining
lovely
me.
to be here.
Thank you, thank you. You know, the topic of religion is one of those topics that is almost like a double-edged sword. A lot of us want to feel the love and support of our Heavenly Father. A lot of us have different beliefs. We don't believe in God per se, but we believe in the universe, spirit, the great I am, whatever words we like to use. But it's one of those love-hate type of relationships, because there's something very comforting in knowing that there is something higher than us looking over us, loving us from afar, and wanting for us to succeed. And yet there's that other side that it's like we've been condemned from the time we're young, told that we're going to go to hell for being the way we are. So we almost kind of, I don't want to use the word hate, but dislike the whole concept of religion. Would you like to add to that statement that I just made?
Well, yes, I believe that really is the essence of the trouble that the LGBT community has with traditional Christianity. The fact that there were commandments made from the beginning to keep us safe, to prevent the spread of disease, to prevent us from falling away to pagan or false faiths. And now it's necessary to re-examine these and determine how they will affect us in our new discoveries in the world. And these new people who are obviously Christian, and they're not worshiping idols. It's not a matter of, as St. Paul presumed, idol worship causing these things, but rather these things can occur naturally, and they were indulged in a carnal and well, a very dangerous sense in these pagan societies which Christians were trying to move away from and maintain the precepts of God. And so we have to concern ourselves with how these precepts affect us now, when we were born into a Christian environment, when we want to be Christian. We're not condemned under those circumstances, so long as we live a moral lifestyle, and one that is in true conformity with the faith established by our Lord.
One of the things that, because I've studied religion, the Bible, when I was a young kid, I was raised Jehovah's Witness, but then I went into other world religions and I studied spirituality. I also read in many of the publications that I've read that Jesus Christ was actually agnostic, and that the whole Christianity was created by a Constantine to actually control the situation. Again, religion is one of those things that, you know, politics and religion people don't really want to discuss, because it's very easily to get argumentative about it, and people tend to wear their feelings on their sleeves, and their beliefs they feel that they're being attacked. But how do you feel about the books that there are out there stating that Jesus Christ went to India, he learned all sorts of different things, and that this whole really dogmatic form of religion that took place as the politicians wanted to control mankind, do you feel that there's a little more flexibility than what we have been taught to believe? And it's okay if you disagree with me. I mean, it's good to have conversations. And
all right, well, it's I have done a lot of thought as to and a lot of questioning about Roman Catholicism, because, as you said, it's the big Roman religion that contains has influence over more than half of all the world's Christians and 1.2 billion people. And you would obviously think, well, of course there are going to be these conspiracies going on. There's going to be a desire to control people. And to be honest, there is. But that's not the whole of it. You will find those people who enter the Catholic Church with a desire to use this absolute power to control people, but you will find many more who truly believe and are willing to sacrifice themselves and want to live a life of love taught by Jesus Christ. And what you will also find when you do the research into what the Vatican has discovered is that it's not an arbitrary decision to make some books canon and some books not. They are based on the most accurate historical surviving texts and papyrus scrolls. The fact is that there's a desire to avoid conflict wherever possible, especially when one is in a first world environment where their life is very comfortable. And so to say, well, our religions are all interconnected, or to say that they're all pretty much the same in their teachings and whatnot, is comforting. It's not entirely accurate. As for Jesus himself, there is no evidence that he went into India and studied Buddhism. That's highly unlikely given his lifestyle, his means, etc. He did not travel very far during his ministry, and if ever there was a time at which he would have traveled far, it would have been that. Also, the Buddhist ideals of peace and self-improvement, they do, just to a limited degree, mesh with the values that Jesus taught. However, Buddha didn't die for them. Also, Buddha didn't claim divinity, nor did he have that direct connection with God. Christ was not agnostic so much as he had this obviously deeper connection than any other being ever could, because he was the Son of God. That is our understanding and our faith.
And again, I respect everyone's belief. I believe otherwise, but the show is not about religion per se. I just wanted to touch base on that and see how you felt and what were your beliefs. I do want to shift a little bit on the topic and ask you, reading your bio, you identify as a hermaphrodite. I can't even say that name right. Some individuals do find this term a bit offensive, and they say that it's almost like impossible to be a hermaphrodite. How do you feel about that, and can you explain why you use that term and what does it mean to you?
All right. Yes, I was actually unaware that it was considered offensive at the time. I know it's an archaism, to be sure, and it's true that when I use the term hermaphrodite spectrum, and the hermaphrodites are only at one end of the spectrum. In fact, as far as I know, there has never been discovered a full, true hermaphrodite who is reproductive. But the reasoning behind it is because, again, if I am to be a peacemaker, I have to be understanding to both sides of this conflict that really shouldn't exist. There shouldn't be sides. But when you use the dread term sex around Christians, it's a lot more worrisome than to use other terms. For example, perhaps you've heard of that infamous study wherein 72% of Americans were in favor of gays and lesbians in the military, but only 58% were in favor of homosexuals in the military. It's something like that. It seems silly, but if you refer to yourself as intersexed around Christians, that can conjure up the image of a whole bunch of strange psychosexual disorders or strange sexual practices, and it puts them ill at ease. But if you say hermaphrodite, that opens up the dialogue to a more medical-based discussion, and you can explain the science behind it. Similarly, I wouldn't use the term life choices around them. I decided to do something to change my gender. I would point out how biologically we had these elements at the core of our brains, and in my case elsewhere, from the beginning, that this was not a matter of choice or change, but a matter of rectifying incongruencies due to our mutations. And so I understand that, yes, some of the terms I use will seem like archaisms and perhaps even offensive, but I use them only to refer to myself and those who are also willing to utilize these terms for the dialogue. The book itself does use the term intersex instead of hermaphrodite because that is a more accurate term for it.
The interesting thing is with Christianity and the judgment is that the icon they follow, which is Jesus, used to hang around everyone, from the lepers to the prostitutes. He loved everyone. He had, his heart was all about unconditional love. And I find it very bizarre that Christians, which are following Christ-like behavior, tend to want to place everything in a box and judge everyone. And it's all about love. It's all about unconditional love. I believe that they're actually pushing people away from God. And if God was a business, Christianity is a very poor business model, I believe.
I concur.
Go ahead.
I think that I know and believe that love is the paramount commandment. And the issue of certain things being judged as sinful and whatnot stem from two things. And one is the inherent human desire to condemn, to feel superior morally to one another. And the other side of it, that these are concerns that are voiced in the Bible and that are voiced by religious authorities, and at times even voiced by Jesus himself, though not with regards to the LGBT community. The suggestion is that this is part of an apostatic, immoral movement that our decadent society is going towards. And what we need to do is make it clear that we are not part of this glorification of the sexual, of this tolerance of anything, of everything, that we are moral people and that we can be good Christians and that there is nothing really sinful about us and about what we are and how we were born, and separate our nature from the sexual depravity and the decadence and this media that would sell us on this kind of thing, and in so doing present us in a very bad light.
Now, another point that I like to bring out, Jesus Christ died to clear us or clean us of our sins. So what I remember, what I studied in the Bible, that there's nothing that we have to do. There is no deed to go to heaven, because that's why, according to the belief, he shed his blood and died on the cross for us. So I get very confused when individuals, whether it's Christianity, Catholicism, whatever type of belief system, tries to condemn us and say we're going to go to hell, or all these things that we're told, when the bottom line is the Son of God supposedly came and died on the cross to save us from our sins. So I kind of have a little problem with that. But let's talk a little bit about your childhood and what kind of impressive memories do you have?
All right, then, regarding my childhood, I was part of being a child who was born in the last year of the 70s. I was part of the whole post-second wave feminism social experiment that assumes that things are nurture more than nature. And that was both boon and bane for me, because I could take advantage of the fact that the children's programs and that generally had at least a token female character, even if it was aimed at boys, and I would inevitably latch on to them, whether it was Tila from He-Man or Princess Allura from Voltron, etc. There would be that element. And so when I leapt from He-Man into the She-Ra, the female-focused one, that didn't seem an issue as long as I was only dealing with my parents, and as long as I eventually outgrew this phase. the problem was that the double standard was still very much there. It was okay to act like a boy if one was a girl, but not vice versa. The sexism, the misogyny was there, and we were just kind of in denial. And I swiftly, being, I guess, somewhat precocious, I adapted at a very young age, about maybe about 4 or 5, to just disguise everything and try to act like a boy. And I remember things rather vividly. There's a game that some people sometimes play with me. They can name any month in my entire life, and I can tell them what was going on then and what I was doing then. The one place where things kind of went to a head, as far as prominent individual moments go, was because I was careful to avoid detection of my true self and to conceal, don't feel, if you'll pardon the expression. I found it an interesting. I had to endure a lot of potential resentment for the world and my situation in the world and its intolerance and its hypocrisy, to some degree regarding what we've been discussing. And when I was 17, we had an interesting project at school. We were to decide whether humanity was inherently good or evil, and then argue. And there were groups in the class there was a group for those who thought humanity was evil, and I was tempted to argue on that side, but I thought, no, I believe that humanity is good. I believe in God and Christ, and that all of this is real. And I actually ended up giving the final argument, which won the debate in favor of goodness. So yeah, go goodness. And the thing, though, is that I wasn't permitted. I was advised against using my ultimate argument because it was too difficult. It was too complex. It was the idea, and it's a very Catholic idea, that the world is evil. The world is the source of the evil. Living in this dark universe where we're 23% dark matter, 73% dark energy, 4% everything else, mostly dark and cold. We as life forms vie with one another for energy on the cellular level. And of course, even when we know success and kind of the fat culture and whatnot, that turns into laziness, because in a subconscious cellular level, we're still like in this sort of grab as much as you can and hoard it kind of philosophy. But that within us, we desire something more. We desire love. We desire really a better world.
My belief is that there's no such thing as good or bad. Things just are. And without the light, or without the darkness, you can't appreciate the light. So I believe that this dimension, and again, these are my personal belief, this dimension that we're living in, I consider the third dimension. It's almost like a quarantine. We're here to learn, to get rid of our baggage so that we could ascend to other dimensions. And it's a very maybe Buddhist, Hindu, spiritual, agnostic belief system, but that's what I personally believe in. I know that you had a near-death experience, and I spoke about it during your bio. Can you elaborate a little bit on this? And I know it happened when you were 16 years of age. Yeah. What actually took place?
It's almost this kind of a sad thing that I wasn't hooked up to hospital equipment at the time, because then we'd have a lot of interesting data as to what happened regarding my brain functions and my bodily functions. But I can report to you the experience from a first-person perspective. It was a dream, a very intense dream that was the start of it all. And I don't talk about it much anymore because people just think of it as a sort of Hunger Games reference. But I was in this kind of crystal chamber with many others. We were all dressed in uniforms, kind of these space age sort of uniforms. And the crystal was arrayed like steel, was tessellated, almost like panels. And I kept wanting to think of it as a sort of spaceship so that it could become a more of a mundane kind of fantasy thing. But it was just very weird because we weren't addressed by a captain, we were addressed by this massive, limitless light that came from above. And there was a platform, a raised platform like a stage, ahead and above us. And I was in the crowd. There were two people upon it, and the voice stated that the sun, the star shall explode, destroying all life on its inhabited world, unless two of you intercept it and absorb the fire yourselves. These two, i.e. the ones who stood on the stage, had been chosen for this suicide mission. And I stood there, again, largely as an observer, thinking for a moment about how horrible this was, how this demand for sacrifice, even though it was to save the world, that these people would simply be chosen for it. And so again, with this Catholic zeal for to do something and for martyrdom, I actually raised my hand and I said, I volunteer to go in place of one of the two chosen. And I was accepted. And I randomly selected the one whom I would replace because I did not know either of them. And I was sent with the other one in this sort of little glass kind of canister. I was ejected into space. And I spoke with him briefly. He asked me, actually, why I volunteered for this. And again, I didn't know who this person was. He was a very handsome young man, but that was it. And so I was, again, on guard. As I was 16 years old, I had this, it still was a trans woman in the guise of a man, and I simply tried to adopt this kind of macho facade and said, this world isn't so great. If I'm going to die, I might as well do some good. And he just stared at me with a sad kind of expression on his face. And then when we arrived at the star, I did not see him again. The star simply loomed menacingly in front of me. And then it burst, this massive supernova, it seemed. And I closed my eyes because I began to feel the searing heat of the explosion as it came, and I stopped breathing. And my body, as you might imagine from a stellar explosion, I did not burn slowly. I burned swiftly, but I burned away. I felt it was this immense pain. Every nerve in my body screamed, and then it was over, and my body turned to ash. And then suddenly I could see again. I was in the spirit. I could fly across space in the blink of an eye, if I still had eyes to blink. And then I became aware that the dream became lucid. I became aware that I had stopped breathing, that my body had shut down. I was, for all intents and purposes, dead, and that I had the choice whether to stay where I was or to return to my body, however distasteful that might have been, as we of the trans community are aware. I chose the latter, and I immediately woke up and took this great gasp of air, because I had been, well, again, the longest I've ever held my breath is somewhere between 3.5 and 4 minutes. I don't know how long my body had shut down for that period, but I know I needed a lot of air, and it was quite a jarring, intense experience.
It's interesting, and I hate to interrupt you, but it sounds like, I don't know if you've heard of astral projection. And in actuality, all the cosmic type of thing is very spiritual in nature. Also, I'm a great believer that Jesus Christ was a star walker, and you go from dimension to dimension. And it sounds like a lot of the experience that you had in what you believe was a dream was almost like an outer body experience or astral projection that took place. A lot of people do experience that, and it's very real. I mean, I tend to do that a lot at night I meditate before I go to sleep, and there are times I wake up and whatever I felt during that stage I was in, I'm sore. I could either come back all sweaty. I mean, it feels vivid. It feels alive. I want to go ahead and share a little clip of a video that you provided for me, Vision of Heaven, 16-year-old girl near-death experience. I'm going to have Joe just play a few minutes of that, and then we'll resume to some more questions.
Amidst a crowd of human-like creatures, in a vast chamber like unto tessellated crystal steel. In the center of it stood a great raised platform, like a stage, upon which two men stood. Above them was a light, from which came the voice of the one who commanded us. The sun shall explode and destroy all life on its inhabited world, unless two of you intercept it and absorb the fire yourselves. The two here have been chosen for this suicide mission. For a brief moment all was silent, and I stood thinking of how being burned alive was such a horrible way to die. I could not just stand there and watch it happen to someone else. I was inspired by Jesus. With a surprising degree of calm, I raised my hand and said, "I volunteer to go in place of one of the two chosen." I was accepted. Apparently my act alone was enough to qualify me. However, I was still watching these events unfold from the perspective of a 16-year-old earthly girl in the guise of a boy. I had no idea who either of these chosen ones were, and I did not wish to play favorites. I tried to select my replacement randomly. I recall that I nonchalantly actually said, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo." I was only 16 after all. Wherever we had been became invisible as the two of us were ejected into the dark universe, there to spend our final moments together in a glass-like cell the size of an elevator. As we drifted through space, my partner asked me the obvious question: "Why did you volunteer for this?" He was a noble man, to be sure, who loved his duty and whose duty was love, yet I neither knew him nor trusted him, even when about to be burned alive. I could not come out of the closet. I instead put up a macho facade and replied, this world isn't so great. If I'm going to die, I might as well do some good." I do not know whether or not the chosen one was disappointed by my evasive response, but he gazed back at me with a silent expression of supernal sorrow. I never saw him again. The bloated sun loomed menacingly in the distance, as though every photon were a twinge of anguish, and each flare manifest rage. Then it burst, and I felt what it was to burn alive. The moment of rising heat was very brief, for I could not pull away, and then every nerve in my body simultaneously screamed.
Interesting.
Yes.
When did you decide to transition, and how has your journey been thus far?
Well, eventually I tried my best to be the man that the world seemed to want me to be, until about the beginning of 2006, when I came to realize that I could never do what I needed to do, nor be who I needed to be in such a guise, that I was going to need to go full transsexual and go and transition fully. And then it was a matter of, again, I was a cautious person, seeing what I could do. I even received a number of modeling offers that they were rescinded as soon as I revealed that I was a pre-op trans woman. And I determined, I had to move actually from Toronto to London, and that set me back a bit. But once I reestablished connections with a different university, I was able to get the to work with a psychologist and so I could obtain my medication regularly and through entirely legal channels. The spiritual component of it was also very interesting and detailed one, because visions such as the ones that I received, such as that one, near-death experience, had dissipated for the most part after I had turned 20, and they didn't return until this sort of second puberty brought about by the hormone replacement therapy, as we see here. Those who, again, believe in the New Age kind of spiritualism, sort of thing that you have been speaking about, told me that I am vibrating at a very high level, and whatnot. I'm not sure. It's the details regarding my visions and what I've experienced, I've discussed with my superiors in the Roman Catholic Church, and they're pretty much secret church stuff now.
Yes, and I truly believe, that religion has its good to it, and I respect everyone's belief system, but I think that human beings have so much more potential in them, and we're spirits of light. And it's almost like, this is my humble opinion, that those in the day, the priests, those that had control of humanity, did not want humanity to evolve to their high potential, because religion, politics controls everything. So if mankind and womankind were really in touch with their inner true self and their light and their inner knowing, they wouldn't have control over us. My humble opinion. And I'm sure, because you believe something else, and that's okay. I've always been a believer, agree to disagree, and respect everybody's views and opinion.
Well, our souls have a great deal of potential to them, it's true. And
Yes.
the path to spiritual growth and enlightenment, I believe it comes actually through humility, through love, through faith in God. And I think that at the very least, we can agree that love has a strong connection to that development.
Oh, definitely. It's my other belief is that we're all creator gods in the making. And I think there's an evolution of spirit of humankind, and I think we're in a pendulum right now, and that is why so many of us transgender individuals are being born. If you see all these very young children at the age of 3 or 4 are coming out telling their parents, genetically born a boy, are telling their parents, no, I'm a girl. They're like light children, crystal kids. I don't know if you've heard of the term indigo crystal.
Oh, yes.
It's an evolution that's taken place, in my humble opinion.
Well, I actually do write a bit in Why God Doesn't Hate You about the androgyny of angels, and that now that so many people are visibly being trans, and of course also with homosexuality as well, that's why there has been such a backlash against the classical depiction of angels as being androgynous creatures. Now, if you look at something like that miniseries, The Bible, which was part of that movie Son of God, the angels there, very masculine, sometimes even kind of grimy, kind of 300 sort of people. And again, this is to make it look like there's an absolute gender division even amongst these androgynous beings who do not mate or marry or reproduce.
There's been many articles written about you being a trailblazer, being the first transgender nun. You were quoted in one of these articles, which reads, "Forgiveness needs to begin somewhere." You say it needs to begin with us, all of us, those in the LGBT community and those of Christian faith. Can you elaborate on this a little bit for me?
There is a mutual misunderstanding which pits us against one another. Again, the LGBT community sees Christians oftentimes as you said, as controlling, as not giving proper thought or care to the concerns of the LGBT community, as being swift to condemn them as abominations, fearing what they do not understand. Meanwhile, Christians are concerned that, again, that this is contributing to an apostasy, that it is contributing to a moral breakdown, which has been going on for at least 100 years. There has been a decline in Christianity. Most of this is actually related to the 100 years of wars that we have had. But there's also the issue of the media, the issue of the quote-unquote sexual revolution, the tolerance for bizarre sexual practices. And if we can forgive them their ignorance and forgive them the Christians the swiftness to condemn us as sinners, and show that we do live moral lifestyles and that we can live Christian lifestyles, and that we have more than a lifestyle, the Christian faith, the love that pervades us as much as it does them, then Christians can go about forgiving us for our apparent flaunting of sexual mores and of moral decency and everything that we're associated with, whether we deserve the label of sexually promiscuous pagans or not.
Well, my whole thought too is you look at Leviticus, which is the law that was not made, it was made for the Jews, not the Gentiles. And if you ate shrimp and if you wore two of different kinds of fabrics, was considered a sin. I mean, we've got countries, Jamaica for instance, that are killing homosexuals because that is what's being pushed by the religious belief. Now, I find it very hard to believe that if God intended for humankind not to have the flaws that we have, then we wouldn't be this way. Now, if I am a creator and I make these beautiful beings, if these beautiful beings are doing things that I don't want them to do, am I going to destroy them, or am I going to love them and accept them for who they are? Prime example, you're a father and a mother of a child who has a disability or who has behavioral issues. You're not going to stone your child to death. You're going to love him or her and try to see how well you could reshape that child if possible. If not, you just accept that child the way it is. My biggest beef with religion is that it really makes no sense to me. And one word, they're saying, but God loves you, but he's going to condemn you to hell if you do this. You know, that to me just sends a very mixed message. And it's a mixed message that we're seeing in the entire world about everything. I think that if I was a business person and I was in the business of selling God, I would be more accepting and loving and try to understand humankind a little bit more instead of constantly condemning and trying to push laws that are very antiquated, laws that obviously we cannot abide by because we're human, and to be human is to err. My belief.
Oh, sorry. Well, we're not selling anything. It's not a business model. It's Jesus's free gift of eternal salvation. The issue, of course, is, well, to whom is this open? And again, the issue is not a matter of who we are, but what we do. And the issue of absolute condemnation, because all those things that you mentioned were to prevent us from doing as the beginning of that very chapter of Leviticus says, as the Canaanites to whom I am, into whose lands I am sending you do, or as the Egyptians whose lands you have left do. In other words, don't become pagan, don't worship false gods. And that is the concern with all of these things. So the issue is then, so what homosexuality is wrong and what isn't? In St. Paul's world, we have a homosexuality, which hopefully we can both agree is wrong because of the association, well, you know, the myth of Ganymede, the Catamites. The idea, what was commonplace there was for an older man who had interest in the softness of boys would kidnap or have one kidnapped, pay off the boy's parents, and then keep them as a sort of apprentice sex slave. That was the world in which St. Paul was, and so of course he would be swift to condemn them, as he did in 1 Corinthians 6:9 and in Romans and in Timothy. That is the environment with which he was dealing. And again, I am a sister in training. I am under obedience. To say what, again, I'm not going to go against what the Catholic Church teaches, but it can certainly teach it in a way that is a lot less condemning and a lot more embracing of what I believe homosexuals are very capable of, and that is true monogamous Christian love.
Exactly. And the reason I equate it to a business, because religion in a sense has become a major business. And if I am trying to promote something or trying to convince people of something, trying to get people to accept the love of God, then I would use a different model altogether. We could talk about this forever because it's an interesting topic in general. And
Right.
again, mine is not to disagree with you. I'm just being the devil's advocate and trying to create an intelligible debate, but that is calm, and we're doing that. Just you're saying your thing, I'm saying mine. What message do you have for our community and the world in general?
The basis, of course, is that God does not hate you. He does not hate you for who you are, and he would never condemn you for who you are. If you willingly turn away from him, then again, it's a matter of one's free choice. And people try to pretend that things are choices, like being a trans person, that are not choices. They're responses to natural mutation have occurred within our bodies and within our brains. And that is not condemned because that's part of God's creation. We of Christian faith, we of the trans community, the world in its greed and its pride would break us both, but we are also both beloved of God. And we of the trans community are heavily burdened. We undergo an immense amount of suffering. And we are given a strange and wonderful gift to have at least a modicum, an infinitesimal amount of this androgyny that these, again, higher planar creatures, these angels and whatnot, experience. And we can understand the world in unique and wonderful ways because of this.
So let me ask you, where can our viewers get a hold of your book?
Well, on whygoddoesn'thateyou.com, there's a link to the Balboa Press website, and also it's available on Amazon. Those are probably the primary ways of getting it.
I want to thank you so much for being part of the show and for sharing your story and for being you. And I wish you good luck in everything you do. And thank you for being you. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to take a quick break to announce our other sponsor. We'll be right back with a clip from Ask a Trans Man and the transition video of the week in my new acoustic cafe segment. So stay tuned. Madirosian is a facial feminization surgeon in Jupiter, Florida. He did a fellowship in facial plastic and reconstructive surgery with one of the fathers of facial feminization surgery. He has also completed an extensive training in FFS for the past 6 years, working in close contact with his mentor. Dr. Madirosian performs surgeries in his office in a fully licensed operating room or in the local hospital with highly trained and reliable staff. Give him a call today at 561-624-0900. That's 561-624-0900. Dr. Madirosian is highly qualified and understands our needs. Alrighty, new segment is Ask a Trans Man. What I want everyone to do is you're going to email me, and I'll give you all that information at the end of this segment. And I want to answer your questions, whether you're a gay trans man, whether you're a gay man that's interested in a trans man, whatever it is. Any questions is not off limit. I want to kind of be that guide for you. Because back in ancient times, being two-spirited or transgender was considered a gift. Many came to us for advice, to name their children, to heal them, and to bless them. Needless to say, we were the best of both worlds and great lovers. We were considered teachers, healers, shamans, and precious to the tribe. So therefore, I created a segment called Ask a Trans Man. So you can go ahead and ask me any questions, and I will provide the answers to your question, whether it's spiritual, fitness related, and possibly I'll be creating some advice videos from the questions that I receive, and you could also call in live. Unfortunately, today they're having a little bit of technical difficulty in the studio, so you can't call in, but as of next week, I want you guys to call in. See, always happens on Transition Radio. That's okay. It's those demons out there doing stuff.
We're short a computer, okay? I'll admit it. We're short a computer. We started a second channel. The computer usually took phone calls on and is now being used for that second channel. So
it's good, though. It's growth. That means Gay Life TV is growing, and I love that because growth is always something wonderful.
We're waiting for a new computer to arrive, so you will have your calls back next week, yes.
Yes. So next week, you guys could call in with questions, concern, comments, whatever it is that you like. But for today, I'm going to go ahead and have Joe play a short clip of a video I created called Hard Talk. Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Mark Angelo Cummings speaking. I am really concerned in what I'm seeing in our community and what I'm seeing in the world in general. They are putting us against one another. All these political beliefs, all these organizations that are profiting by our battles, and we are not seeing it. It is important to be happy with self without having to tear one another, without having to tear the world. It is important to realize your true worth and realize who you truly are. I transitioned back in 2003. And my evolution has taken me to this place of realizing who I truly am and what my purpose is here on earth. I can respect your identity. I can respect how you feel inside. But when you try to force the world to see something that they may never see, then all that you are doing is creating battles within. And these battles, in turn, represents how the world sees you. Please, find it within your hearts and yourself to stop battling. Not only battling the world, but battling yourself. This is a self journey. And one day I know that you will see exactly what I'm seeing. But in the meantime, be gentle with those around you, your loved ones. Be gentle with the world. By reprimanding them because they're using words that you wish not to be identified as will solve absolutely nothing. This world we're living in is more to do not just with gender, but more to do with your spiritual growth. And I know many of you don't believe in that, and that's okay. But if you look around you, and you look within you, and you start to listen to that inner voice that you have, because we do all have this inner voice, this inner guidance, you might understand what I'm trying to say. Anyway, just wanted to make a quick video to share that message with you. You are loved. You are not a mistake. You are here for a reason. And this reason is an evolution of your spirit and an evolution of the one source, that one spirit that unites us all. I love you guys. But it is so important to remember to always love yourselves too. Bye-bye. So remember to go ahead and send me your question, your comments, or concerns. This part of the segment, Ask a Trans Man, is going to be for that. And it's that same email, transitionradioshow@gmail.com. Again, that's transitionradioshow@gmail.com. And now we're coming to the part of the transition video of the week and my little corny poetry. The jungle of life can eat us alive if we continue to be the ones who don't survive. Let your spirit run free. Don't let society dictate who you should be. Be alive. Be aware. You are this way and really should not care what others think or what others say. And now, for the transition video of the week with Xander Pander.
You had a baby, you were 17 years old. I was on the road trying to make it my home. You had a man, but he wasn't no good to you. I was with women I didn't know. A footloose, fancy free. A pretty lady, won't you dance with me? 'Cause one look from your eyes, and I knew that it was right this time. Before you came around, couldn't figure out where I was going. I was wandering around. Before I found my way, I was running like a stray. I was a lost boy, just a lost boy. Before you came around. Sweet country baby, you were singing at the airport, raking in tips with the Helia boo. I must have passed you by 100 times before Cupid saw it fit to let me dance with you. A footloose, fancy free. A pretty lady, won't you dance with me? 'Cause one look from your eyes, ooh, and I knew that it was right this time. Before you came around, couldn't figure out where I was going. I was wandering around. Before I found my way, I was running like a stray. I was a lost boy, just a lost boy. Before you came around, I was a lost boy, just a lost boy. Before you came around, couldn't figure out where I was going. I was wandering around. Before I found my way, I was running like a stray. I was a lost boy, just a lost boy. Before you came around. Before you came around.
Go ahead and send me your transition video to transitionradioshow@gmail.com. With Ask the Trans Man, I'm still playing around in my head what I want to do, if I want to get a panel of trans guys together. So when we ask questions, we each have our different answers. So it's not just my perspective, but the perspective of other wonderful FTMs out there, especially gay FTMs. I think we rock. Anyway, now, were you saying something, Joe, or is it me just hearing my echo? Anyway, next week I will start performing acoustic songs like live on the show, but tonight I want to share the last work Transend did together. Jess and I did make beautiful music together, but unfortunately could not make our relationship work. I hope that we have inspired many to love themselves, and although we will always love each other as friends, the fairy tale did come to an end. I want to thank the sponsors, I want to thank all of you for watching, and I want to tell you guys, I love you, but remember to love yourselves too. Trans Man on a Mission signing out, and here is a cover that we recorded in our last stuff together. Thank you everybody. Love you. Love yourselves too.
history repeat itself time after time. I'm just a dreamer. I dream my life away. I'm just a dreamer who dreams of better ways. Once the sun broke down by every one of us, I'm hoping that the dawn will bring a sign, a better place for those who will come after us this time. I'm just a dreamer. I dream my life away. I'm just a dreamer who dreams of better days. Your higher power, make me God, oh Jesus Christ.